All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's lovely to see you. Thank you for being here today and welcome. I'm Fritz Mayer. I'm the dean here at the Corbell School and really proud to be co-hosting today's SunFest event with our friends at the Colorado Sun. For those of you who don't know us, we're the Corbell School of International Studies, but it's actually a bit of a misnomer. We're increasingly a school of public and international affairs, very much grounded here in Colorado. We also house a public policy program. And as Larry and I were just talking about, we're really in the same business as the Colorado Sun. That is to say, we're really in the education business. And so we are just so proud to be working with the Colorado Sun, which because you're here, I don't need to say much about it, but you have to understand what a real treasure the Colorado Sun is. In this moment of desperate need for good, trustworthy public information in a world where the media ecosystem has been hollowed out in so many ways, the Colorado Sun is really a model for how to run a nonprofit educational media business and how to be a trusted source of information. So we're really blessed to have the Colorado Sun and blessed to have today. It's a fabulous program put together by our colleagues at the Sun on a whole range of topics facing Colorado, from climate change to housing to education and a lot more. So we welcome you to the Corbell School, to SunFest. It is a pleasure to have all of you here with us today. And it's now my great pleasure to introduce Larry Rickman. So Larry, as I'm sure most of you know, is a co-founder and publisher of the Colorado Sun, someone who's had a remarkable career in journalism, many, many years at the AP, other postings in Colorado. And Larry really has been witness to the decline over a long period of time of certainly of print journalism in this country, and he decided to do something about it, and that is to establish the Colorado Sun, which, as I said, is really a model nationally for what nonprofit journalism can be. And so it's our great pleasure to have him here today and to be partnered with the Colorado Sun, and for me to welcome Larry Rickman. Larry.
Good morning, and thanks for those kind remarks. Thank you to the Corbell School, and thank you all for coming out. I'm really glad we're not up against the Nuggets this morning, so it's a real relief. I'm going to make some more remarks later if anybody would care to hear them afterward. I know the Attorney General has a tight schedule this morning, so I'm going to let you guys dig right into that. But I'm going to introduce Jesse Paul, who will be engaged in a conversation with the Attorney General, and just the start of a great day of conversations. We're really proud to be able to convene these conversations here at the Colorado Sun. That's part of our public mission. We're not here to tell you how to think or how to vote, but we believe that every Coloradan deserves access to information and news, and that news is a public good. So thank you all for coming here, and without further ado, Jesse and Attorney General Phil Weiser. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. And thanks, everyone, for joining us for SunFest. We have a great program today. Very excited. Thank you so much, Mr. Weiser, for joining us. Probably don't need much of an introduction, but I'll do one anyways. Mr. Weiser has been AG since 2019. Before that, he was dean at the University of Colorado Law School. Prior to that, he worked at the Obama Justice Department. Now, Mr. Weiser is running to be Colorado's next governor. I skipped over some things like Techstars. Yeah, okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. So I know you're a big baseball fan. I think I've heard you talk a lot of times about choosing Denver because it had a Major League Baseball team. You might regret that now. So I'll start off by saying that it kind of feels like deja vu all over again with you and the Trump administration. You filed something like 20 million lawsuits against the administration so far. So I think we're already above what you did in total in term one, if I'm correct. Can you talk a little bit about what you learned in the first Trump term and what you're trying to replicate now, or what you're trying to change in order to push back against Trump?
Usually it's said about baseball fans, hope springs eternal in the spring. the Rockies have buried all hope, except if you're rooting for them to beat the Mets record from 1962. And hope is well alive for that notorious accomplishment. For those who don't remember Casey Stengel and the Amazings, they at least had a lot of fun doing it. I will say the difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is stark. And during the first Trump administration, I found myself saying, I didn't realize how good we had it with the second Bush administration, where, for example, Louis Libby wasn't going to be pardoned, who broke the law. He was pardoned in Trump 1, and a lot of other really painful, hurtful, illegal actions. And yet, in Trump 2, what I can now observe is in Trump 1, there were guardrails. There were some lawyers and people, Rod Rosenstein, to name one example, who said, Mr. President, you can't do that. Or, Mr. President, let's think before we do that. The level of deliberation, the level of restraint, it's gone. Instead, starting from day one, we had an attack on the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. And I brought my copy here. I can read it. If you're born here, you're a citizen. And I want to emphasize this point about this administration because it's remarkable. There was an argument yesterday at the U.S. Supreme Court about this administration's effort to undermine a constitutional freedom, birthright citizenship. The argument didn't really have any justice suggesting that what the president did was lawful. The Trump administration barely tried to defend what they did as lawful. It was called a fringe theory. Now, they're debating at the Supreme Court, probably now behind closed doors, yesterday was in public, what type of injunction's appropriate. But we've gone past, did this administration, on its first day, break the oath of office? We shouldn't normalize that. In this case, birthright citizenship, this is one of 20, not 20 million, just correct the record. The judge who heard it in Washington, a Reagan appointee, asked the question rhetorically, where were the lawyers when you did this? And he called this the most unconstitutional thing he's ever seen. So what is different between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is the level of brazen, reckless, blatant violations of the Constitution. And you can go down through the Constitution. I've been talking about the 14th Amendment, but we could talk about the First Amendment, or we could talk about due process of law, also in the 14th Amendment, or we could talk about separation of powers, this foundational principle. Today, we just got a preliminary injunction in a case Colorado led to protect $230 million in public health funding mandated by Congress that can't just be withheld by the executive branch. We're fighting for Colorado and for people every day. This money is going to save lives in terms of protecting against diseases, behavioral health. And what I don't understand about this administration is why there's not more restraint, more reflection about the harm that's happening. One more example, and I know you can follow up on any of them. AmeriCorps. It's about national service. Hundreds of Coloradans helping veterans, helping kids learn how to read, helping address the opioid crisis. This isn't a partisan effort that can or should be criticized on partisan grounds. This is an American effort. I believe in service, and I believe in separation of powers, and yet this administration is seeking to dismantle AmeriCorps as well, take away $8 to $10 million in funds to Colorado, and undermine this volunteer opportunity. So Trump 1 versus Trump 2, this is worse. This is harder. Our team is ready, and we did learn lessons in Trump 1 because we brought a number of lawsuits, as you said, not nearly as many as we've already brought in Trump 2, and I'm really glad I've been AG for 6 years, and I've had the chance to build a team, so I'm ready to meet this moment. This is a formidable challenge for all of us. I'm also fortunate that other state AGs and myself have strong working relationships. We've brought 20 lawsuits. 3 of them we've led, but 17 we're joining with others as part of a team.
Talk a little bit about the stress this has had on your team. Like I know the Department of Law and the Attorney General's office you've got a lot of lawyers, but you don't have that many, right? I mean, you've got to deal with all of the state issues that are going on. You're working on opioid settlement stuff. There's all kinds of consumer protection things that I think are important. I heard you talk on CPR about how things are being stretched thin. So how are you managing, the need to file these lawsuits and push back against the Trump administration with all the other responsibilities that the AG's office has?
Just to give people a little bit of context, we had a very important, very full, what I'll call normal workload in December of 2024. Jesse mentioned a number of critical issues. Working on the opioid crisis. I know we'll come back to that. Working on protecting consumers, improving the criminal justice system, protecting our land, air, and water, representing every single agency in state government. That work didn't go away. We still need to do all that work. And on top of that, we have all these cases and other counseling issues because the federal government is now operating in a blatantly lawless way, attacking constitutional principles. We've had to rise to this challenge. I asked the legislature for 3 more people, which doesn't come remotely close to the demands we're facing. So Jesse, your premise is right. We have stretched ourselves to meet this moment. I am so proud of the public servants in my office who are doing their normal jobs and then going above and beyond to work on these other cases because they know what is at stake. And the split screen between the rhetoric I'm hearing about federal public servants from Washington and what I can tell you I see in my office, it's hard to watch the attacks on public servants. And as we have been interviewing people, more than a few people are coming to us from the federal government saying, I don't feel welcomed or I'm being pushed out. And what haunts me is on the other side, we're going to have to rebuild our institutions, whether it's AmeriCorps, whether it's the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or whether it's the Department of Justice. We're seeing a degrading of our federal government, and that's taking a toll on us. We are a check. The states are a check on lawless federal activity. We have to meet this moment, but it's a lot of work.
So you mentioned the birthright citizenship case, but beyond the substance of that case, there's also this general, broader question about whether or not, single lower court federal judges can issue nationwide injunctions. If the Supreme Court decides that no, they can't, what does that mean? I mean, for the legal action that you're taking, does that mean that AGs have to work independently in each of their own states, or do you band together with other states in the 10th Circuit purview?
Jesse, we're going to have to see how the court addresses that issue. What's it mean? I want to start with a premise that I sure hope doesn't get departed from. When you're talking about a core constitutional freedom like birthright citizenship that affects everyone across America, if you deny a universal injunction, what you're saying is, and your question gets to this, that Colorado brings its own case for Coloradans, but what happens if Idaho doesn't bring a case? And let's just say this case happens to be a great example. The action is lawless. It's flatly unconstitutional. So that the question that's before the court will become not the merits, because everyone's going to be like, yeah, they've violated the Constitution. But then what do you do about it? To allow unconstitutional action to exist in Idaho of a fundamental freedom because Idaho didn't bring a case, I think is untenable. What happens for someone who's born in Idaho and then moves to Colorado? Do they then all of a sudden get birthright citizenship? What if you're in Colorado and you move to Idaho? Do you lose it? So I don't know how that would work. I sure hope they don't go there in this case. I'll give you a different sort of case, the one that we got the preliminary injunction today, public health funding. So we brought this case on behalf of a number of states, including Pennsylvania and Kentucky, where the Democratic governors said we got to be in this case, even without AGs saying they want to be in. But we brought this case, and only the states who bring the case get the injunction. Well, that's about money. That's easily separable. I get why you wouldn't have a universal injunction where some parties didn't bring that, but I don't see how that could work in birthright citizenship.
I guess the other issue, too, would be, part of the reason you guys have the resources to file these lawsuits is you're working with other states. That would kind of negate that entire situation.
Although that's an interesting question. They could say that. Right now, if there's a case with multiple states, like the public health one I mentioned, Colorado can take the leading oar, draft the papers, appear in the argument, and then we'll have other states join us in the case. They'll all get the relief, too. The most extreme rule, and I don't know if the Supreme Court would go there, is to say we're not going to allow states to band together in multi-state lawsuits. You've got to bring individual states cases, individual jurisdictions. That would be, to my mind, wasteful because there's a huge economies of scale to allow us to collaborate, and it would be most unfortunate if the court imposed such a rule.
I want to switch gears and talk about your gubernatorial bid. I think some Democrats are feeling a little bit wary about, your primary with Michael Bennet, how that's going to play out, and whether or not it might go negative. I remember, when he jumped into the race, you put out some spicy statements, and I know you were, or at least were friends. How do you kind of keep it from going off the rails? And if you want to talk about, like what your separation is from Michael Bennet and what differences you have.
I've known Michael Bennet for a long time. He is a great public servant. I am so happy he is in the Senate. What I will what I will say is Colorado can have a great outcome in this election. Michael Bennet for Senate, Phil Weiser for governor. And the alternative, thinking about the Nuggets from last night, would you put Aaron Gordon on the bench and put Jamal Murray as your power forward? We have a few sports fans in the audience shaking their heads. No. Jamal Murray is your point guard. Michael Bennett's been in the Senate for close to 18 years. He's got seniority. He's got great respect. Particularly during this time, we need him there fighting for us. I've been building up this experience in Colorado. I am the people's lawyer here in Colorado, working on issues involving every state agency all across Colorado, working as an executive who's shown a commitment to innovative problem solving. Michael's working in the world's greatest deliberative body, where he can have a powerful voice and influence, including on the National Democratic Party. What I also will say, and this will be a difference too, is he's had a different approach to the Trump administration than I have. And he said he supported a number of the cabinet picks, thinking it would give him a relationship that would help get things done for Colorado. I've ended up suing a number of those picks that he has supported because I see no other choice. When someone is breaking the law and harming Colorado, when it's our principles at stake, whether it's how we protect our climate, whether how we protect diversity and inclusion, whether it's how we protect AmeriCorps, that's not a time for polite conversation. It's a time to stand our ground, to fight for what we believe in. And the choice for voters in this election is, how do we as Colorado want to show up in this moment? And who are the right leaders for the right positions? And I would say, let's keep Aaron Gordon as power forward and Jamal Murray as point guard.
All right, I'm going to keep the analogy going. So, Michael Bennet obviously, seems to have some better name ID than you, though, and some polling reflects that. I will put in a plug for 10 a.m. after this session. You can hear about polling in Colorado downstairs. So maybe he's the Nikola Jokic, and you're the
Christian Brown. You want to go with that?
Yeah. So like, how do you overcome that name ID gap? Which seems to be like a real issue.
So for those who are fans of Christian Brown, what you know, nobody works harder than Christian Brown on both ends of the floor. Nobody. And what people will be able to see in my campaign is how hard, effective we are going to work all across the state. We have campaigns for a reason. When Federico Pena announced he was running for mayor, people were like, who's Federico Pena? Some people here remember. And he ran a campaign about imagine a great city. He called people to a higher purpose. He brought energy and spirit, and that paved the way for victory. In my campaign, that's the playbook we have. I will also note when I first ran, and Jesse, I know you remember this, I was running against someone with a much better known name. And it didn't stop me because I believe in the people of Colorado. And I believe that in a campaign, what you can do is build significant momentum, energy, excitement, and we're going to have a lot of on-the-ground activity. If people here want to get involved, I welcome your support, philforcolorado.com. That's why we have a campaign. So no, I'm not particularly worried that I may start out with lower name ID. I'm excited about how we're showing up, and I'm excited about where it's going to go.
I do remember that race being pretty close, though, I will say.
5,000 votes in the primary.
Yeah. That kept me on my toes that year. So one last Michael Bennett related question, and then I want to move on to some of your platform and the governor's race. If he does win, would you seek the Senate appointment?
No.
Okay, good to know. Thank you for answering that. That's so refreshing.
No, I'm running to be governor because I want to be governor. I've been spending all my time, and there are people in Congress right now with federal experience who'd be better picks for the Senate. So for me, and this is a difference that's worth saying, I'm not in politics because I want to be in politics. I don't need to be in some elected office because I want to be in elected office. Had Hillary Clinton won in 2016, I would have gone to work in appointed office in the federal government in whatever role I could have had, like I did under Obama and under Bill Clinton. It's the accident of the 2016 election that I ran for office at all. I have loved serving as the elected attorney general, the people's lawyer. I'd love to be the people's governor. If I'm not elected to that position, I will find something else to do.
All right. Well, your gubernatorial campaign platform, when you rolled it out, had a lot to do with Trump. But I want to talk to you about Tabor because that's, the state budget is a huge issue right now. I wonder what you think the Democrats should do in the coming years when it comes to Tabor. If it's repeal it altogether, get rid of the cap. What direction do you think Democrats should go?
When you look at my overall platform and vision, one of the points that I have focused on is young people and an intensive mentoring initiative. I've also focused on a call to service for young people, having easy pathways to serve in teaching, in nursing, firefighting, law enforcement, and counseling. That commitment to young people requires an investment in young people. We can't do that because of Tabor. Right now, Tabor is pitting education against healthcare in our budget. Tabor is a vice. We have to fix it. It's probably a vice in both senses of the word. And here's the thing. A lot of people, when you ask about Tabor, they say, oh, does that mean I get to vote on my taxes? Yes, and that's totally fine. That's accepted. Let's put that to one side. But it means a couple other things, too. We can't have progressive taxes in Colorado, and it also means this, you called it out, this hard cap. The state budget is capped population growth plus inflation. This year, for the first time in a while, if you look at population growth and inflation, it's a low number. But other costs are growing. I mentioned healthcare before, education, corrections. What does that do? It squeezes the budget. I also want to give you a sense of just how pernicious this is. I'm working on police training to recruit more people into policing, to train them to be effective, responsible, empathetic. And we are doing this for the first time in 40 years, reimagining law enforcement training. That's the sort of thing that could take an additional investment. But because of Tabor, even though there's a dedicated fund, on your registration when you get your car, there's a fund dedicated to police training. We can't go and increase those dedicated funds because if we did, it'll push up against the cap. We'll have to cut something else. The hard question that I'm going to need to face, how do we change Tabor? Because it has been tried twice in the last 8 years. I'm going to suggest trying it a way that Dan Ritchie, a mentor of mine, many people know, a civic leader on this campus, revered, former chancellor. Dan Ritchie had this idea called Building a Better Colorado. When I challenged the King Soopers Albertsons merger, I did 19 town halls across the state to hear what people thought and to explain how antitrust law works. That's what I need to do on Tabor. When I become governor, I got to go across the state, engage leaders, and say, you get to vote on your taxes. We're not talking about that. But let's talk about how our budget works. Let's talk about the consequences. And let's ask, is this the Colorado that we want? Because, again, I want a Colorado where we invest in kids and their future. And right now, we can't do that. So I am for fixing Tabor. I'm for addressing this hard cap, for doing it in a bottom-up way, which will help inform exactly how we do it. Because like the King Soopers town halls, I'll be listening at every one of those town halls to think, what am I missing? What can I learn from someone's perspective that will help us have better public policy?
I think, though, if you're governor, people are going to be looking to you for the answer, right? I mean, I think that's, like Governor Polis last night when we talked to him on this stage said, eliminating the cap, voters have said no to that. His proposed solution is something similar to CC, not eliminating the cap, but asking for cap increases for specific spending ideas. Folks in the legislative leadership said, we shouldn't try and be suing the state. That's something that our members have said. This is really the voters put Tabor in. They should try and repeal it. So, I mean, if if someone asked you, right, I mean, on the campaign trail and wants to know what would Phil Weiser as governor push for on Tabor, what would your answer be?
Well, my answer is we got to change this cap. I personally don't love the idea of just a temporary fix because we've done that and we'll be back in the same situation in the future. So I'd rather address it going forward. To your point, yes, you can tinker with or change the hard cap in more than one way. And part of what I would say is I really believe in learning from people on the grassroots. I want to give an example here because your premise is one that I hear a lot, which is, oh, these politicians, they either think they figured it out or maybe they have figured it out. No. I learned from the grassroots. When I did that town hall about the King Soopers Albertsons challenge or Safeway challenge, I learned why the merger was not competitive, as well as the extent to which people believed the merger was anti-competitive and harmful, and that informed our challenge. I'll give you a second example. When I ran to be Attorney General, I went across our whole state. And I show up in the San Luis Valley and I meet the local sheriff. And he tells me 90% of people in the jail in Alamosa County are struggling with opioid addiction. 90%. He says, I can't help them. We don't have treatment here. Now, to your point, Jesse, I didn't start my campaign to be Attorney General thinking I'm running because I want to address the opioid crisis. I started with a series of ideas, but I also started with a commitment that I would learn from what I heard on the ground. And because of those conversations about the opioid crisis, that became my top priority. And we went and sued Big Pharma and brought back $900 million to Colorado. And we set up a framework that Johns Hopkins Public Health School has celebrated when they did this review the first year of these opioid settlement frameworks. They said Colorado had it best. Every dollar is transparent, every dollar is to the crisis. And I went back last summer to the San Luis Valley and saw the opening up of the first drug treatment center there that they've had. So that's, to me, what honest, bottom-up leadership looks like. I do believe to be a public servant, a servant leader, you can't just say, I've got all these other ideas, listen to me. It's got to be, hey, what are your ideas? Or what do you think about some ideas? How do I make them better?
All right, we've got about a little less than 10 minutes left, so I want to tackle a couple other issues in the time that's left. I'm going to talk about artificial intelligence and Colorado's first-in-the-nation law. Obviously, you know, there was that failure of the bill this year at the legislature that would have tweaked it. You signed on to that letter with Michael Bennett, Jared Polis, Brittany Pedersen, Joe Neguse, kind of calling on the legislature to act. Frantically, that didn't happen, even though they tried to at like 11:59:59 on the last day that they could. Talk about your concerns and where you think this conversation is going. And I know you are recently coming out and saying that you oppose this federal moratorium. That's something that the governor actually disagrees with you on. He wants the federal moratorium. You know, why do you think this is something that should be left to the states? And also, what do you think the states should do about it, given that, you know, now there's this time crunch?
For those who are coming to this issue fresh, there's a lot there. I would commend to you, last fall I gave a speech on my website outlining my views a little more in depth on artificial intelligence. I do want to say, in the best of all worlds, the federal government would create a responsible, thoughtful framework for artificial intelligence. That would be the best result. The laughing is indicative of a little bit of what I think about from the movie Mars Attacks, where the Capitol was bombed by Mars, and Jack Nicholson says 2 out of 3 branches of government are functioning perfectly. Unfortunately, today we can say 1 out of 3 of our federal branches of government are functioning, which would be the judicial branch. And as a result, we have neither an executive branch right now or legislative branch right now wrestling with artificial intelligence, which will be one of the biggest issues of our time. Eric Schmidt yesterday said artificial intelligence will be the biggest issue in the last 500 years. I don't know if that's exactly the case, but I will say this. It's an extremely big deal, and it is irresponsible that Congress isn't figuring out what framework should we have for artificial intelligence governance. This is a game changer for our society. It has extraordinary potential for greatness and for harm. What is the federal government doing at this moment? Considering a 10-year moratorium on any state measures affecting artificial intelligence. That's the opposite of what it should be doing. I don't love the fact that when it comes to many public policy issues, and sadly it's a long list, privacy is on this list too, data privacy, dealing with social media and the harms to kids on this list, and yes, artificial intelligence on this list. All these issues are ones we should be dealing with at the federal level. But in the absence of federal action, what do we have? We have the states as laboratories of democracy. In Colorado, we have passed laws against deep fakes that can be used to basically make it look like one kid is engaging in sexually explicit activity, and for that to be shared. That's incredibly harmful. We can have deepfakes used in electioneering that can undermine the integrity of elections. Colorado has laws on those two areas. This moratorium would preempt those laws and many other laws that could affect things like scams against seniors who get calls, the imposter scam. Hi, Grandma, it's Sammy. Can you send me money? It's easy to create voices or images from people using AI. I want us to protect consumers from that. I do not want a federal moratorium. I want a federal law that's responsible and that empowers me as a state AG to enforce that federal law. I led a coalition of state AGs pushing that in comments a couple years ago. And yes, I led this letter now of 40 states saying, do not do this preemption, which gets to the question about the law in Colorado. What do we do? Ideally, we won't have complex legislation getting passed at the last minute. And what happened a year ago was this artificial intelligence law that many hadn't had a chance to look at or study or give feedback on. It passed. And then the governor signed it right away. And this is not how the process should work. At that point, I then began hearing feedback about the law that had already been signed. And so did the governor, and so did the person who pushed the law, the Senate Majority Leader. So the three of us wrote a letter a year ago saying this law is really problematic, we have to fix it. And then a process went to fix the law, and as you accurately noted, that process was unsuccessful. So at the 11th hour, a number of us, including myself and the governor, said, can we please push out the effective date of this law that would have a lot of regulatory burdens on people who might use artificial intelligence and not even know they're using it. And the legislature didn't push out that effective date, and you can read my testimony about that as well, which brings us to where we are. And there's talk that there could be a special session that might deal with it. I don't know yet what the right venue is going to be to deal with it, but it's not a great situation to have a law set to go into effect that the governor, myself, and the person who led it acknowledged is problematic and needs to be changed.
You can watch our conversation with the governor last night to find out what he said about the special session, or subscribe to the unaffiliated newsletter because we had that in there too. Do you think the governor should have vetoed that bill last year then?
I wasn't a part of that process, and when the governor does have me a part of it, I don't share publicly, so I'm not going to comment on the governor's decision.
All right. In the last minutes that are left, speaking of technology, the governor vetoed Senate Bill 86 this year, which was aimed at protecting kids from the perils of social media by imposing a bunch of new regulations on sites like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You supported the bill. Do you think the governor was wrong to veto it, and if so, why?
I went into this conversation about the social media bill with the governor, and I said, I want you to understand why I'm pushing this. And he said, I want you to understand why I don't believe in it. And we had a respectful difference. I believe that part of democracy is that people are going to see things differently. The governor has the veto pen. He has the right to do it. I respect his decision. I will tell you, when I'm governor, I'll sign this law. And I'll tell you why I'll sign it. Kids are hurting. These social media platforms are engaging in reckless, irresponsible behavior on a daily basis. The type of behavior that this law deals with is sales of fentanyl or firearms or child sex exploitation. It's online. It's on a number of these platforms. These platforms don't do a good enough job policing themselves. They don't cooperate with law enforcement as effective as they should. We wrote a report commissioned by the legislature about this, and our conclusion was it's as easy to purchase fentanyl online as it is to get a pizza. And this has been a game changer. People can get fentanyl delivered to them. They don't have to show up where they know drug dealers are. They're getting it delivered because of the way these online platforms are making it so easy. We sent a letter this week to WeChat, which not only has an online platform like Facebook Messenger or others, it has money transferring too. So it's a complete service enabling fentanyl distribution. I want to get back to this point about fentanyl, which I've been working on. I talked about the crisis. We had some good news. For the first time in a long time, we saw fentanyl deaths go down 30%. That's 400 lives. But I'll tell you, if you look at the chart of the deaths, it's been like this. We have a lot of work to do. We've got to use every tool we can, interdiction, going after these online platforms, prevention, naloxone. We need all the tools we can. This bill is one of those tools to save lives. That's why I support it.
All right, we're at time, but I just want to ask one last yes or no question. Another bill debated in the legislature this year was the Worker Protection Act, which would have rolled back the second vote requirement for union security negotiations in the Colorado Labor Peace Act. The governor has said he would veto it. As governor, would you sign it?
I have strong views about how important it is for us to support unions. And as part of my family story, my grandparents came here, belonged to a union, got a good job and opportunity. I believe in the right to organize. I believe we've got to change the Labor Peace Act to address some of the antiquated requirements it has. And I believe the way to do that's with a process of having rigorous engagement, working together. That process this year came really close. And the process, if it's left to me, is one that I will bring to a conclusion to change this law. What I'm worried about right now is we're facing a potential set of ballot wars, and no one's going to win. We're not going to work the problem. It's going to be expensive and contentious. So I'm still hopeful we're going to get to a better place before that. If it's to me to get this done, I will get it done. We've got to improve our law, and we've got to do it the right way.
What about eliminating the vote, signing Senate Bill 5?
The question about these thresholds is not necessarily, call it a binary. There's a range of proposals that were put forward that deserve to be figured out, and the way to do that's through an open process, through true collaboration and listening. I mentioned the opioid work before. The way we got to the framework we have was we sat down, had a lot of hard conversations that I personally leaned into. That's what I would do here. This is a priority for me to address, to get this right for workers, to make sure that our labor laws are working. Right now at the federal level, they're not working. We're seeing a gutting of protections for workers. We've got to make sure our law work well in Colorado. If we haven't addressed this before I'm governor, that'll be key responsibility to make sure we get this right.
All right, well, thank you so much, Mr. Weiser. I appreciate it, and thank you for joining us.